Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of the secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southernist JW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 16 of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week, I wanted to start the pre-ramble with some news that probably nobody really will mourn too much. The death of Fidel Castro. Of course, some people want to act like he was some kind of fucking revolutionary. He was a dictator who murdered people, who didn't do what he wanted to. Yeah, he had some role in history, but that doesn't make him a fucking hero. And just because he was a leftist doesn't mean he was fucking awesome. So, I'm going to have to do a little research. To be honest with you, it's something I've wanted to investigate for a while. I do know that a lot of people in rickety boats wanted to get the fuck away from him so bad that they were willing to brave shark-infested waters and death and imprisonment, torture if they were captured. So I'm not feeling too bad about the death of old Casty, considering the fact he was 90 fucking years old. So rest in hell, if there was such a place, I guess. This week on the Palaver, I have my good friend and fellow Middle Tennessee podcaster Tucker Drake with me. We speak of sundry subjects, including his podcast and how poverty sucks. I wanted to mention that I did a promo for the show, and if you listen to other podcasts, hopefully it'll pop up, so let me know if you hear it on other podcasts. I know Cass over at Everyone's Agnostic said he would play it, so. But if you hear it anywhere else, I would greatly appreciate if you would let me know. So anyway, on to the palaver.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
Hi, this is Dan, Brian, and Matt with the Godless Revolution Podcast. We've had a lot of great guests on this show, such as Russell Glasser, Dan Arrow, Brian Fields, David Silverman, Doug Mesner, a.k.a. Lucian Greaves, and Joey Kirkman, whom we love a lot.
We've also had a lot of really cool local guests. And we're a podcast that likes to fight for the separation of church and state and against anti-skepticism of all kinds.
You should give us a listen, because if you don't, you're going to be really sad.
Make your ears happy. Listen to the Godless Revolution Podcast.
Welcome to another edition to Palaver here on the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week is a guy I've known for maybe a year and a half now. He's a fellow podcaster here in the Middle Tennessee area. He does the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast with his co-host, Professor Fuzznuts, who is present and accounted for on the call, though you cannot hear him. So if you will join me in welcoming Tucker Drake. How's it going, Tucker?
Hey, it's going okay. Considering I feel like I'm living in Germany in 1931.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel like that right now.
Yeah, I have been checking up on everybody I know in an at-risk community to make sure that they're okay and they haven't decided to kill themselves or something because of this, which I do not find fun. I'd rather check up on them just because I want to know what they're doing with their lives, etc., not that they still have a life.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of sharing resources that you can contribute to. People have been doing GoFundMes. There was one who was doing one. They're going to do name changes for free for transgender people. And if they want to get their passports, because a lot of people are afraid they're going to change the laws so they can't do it. So there's a lot of, that's encouraging. There's a lot of kind of cooperation on that front from a lot of different people trying to help minorities and LGBT people and women out and stuff. So that's something, I guess, but it's still, a lot of people are fucking scared out of their fucking mind what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to have you on, talk about, first of all, you're a podcast, The Atheist in the Trailer Park. First of all, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what your podcast is about?
Well, it depends on what week you tune in. I alternate. I do a news episode, usually with America Darling Curl, where we just gab about various news stories that we find interesting. And other weeks, I am presently reading from the various books of the Apocrypha, which are, well, depending on which sect of Christianity you belong to, may or may not be in your version of the Bible. Sorry, Fuzznuts is scratching at the window furiously for some reason.
There is Professor Fuzznuts. You can pretty much just use that as his introduction. His scratching at the window.
Yeah. But no, the different sects of Christianity include parts or don't include parts of the Apocrypha. The only sect of Christianity that includes the entirety of the Apocrypha that I know of is the Ethiopian Church, oddly enough. And so I've been going through, with the help of you and others, the various works there. Because raised as a Protestant, I knew nothing about the Apocrypha. And in reading it, I'm like, who the fuck ever bought this shit? It's even less realistic than the rest of the Bible.
Yeah, having read some of it with you, it's pretty much the same MO as far as repetitiveness and just it's disconnected and doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of times. So it's an interesting read, if not for nothing else, just because you've never heard it before. But once you start getting into it, you realize it's just the same old shit, different verse, basically.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, Heretic Woman and I, in the episode that'll go up tomorrow, we finished reading the Book of Tobin.
Oh yeah, that I remember Tobin. Yeah,
and
that was on. Yeah,
and fucking nothing happens in it.
There's no grand climax or anything.
No, dude marries chick, doesn't die. They fucking leave, and that's the end of it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck, man? I mean, the only thing of interest was the giant fish.
Yeah, the giant fish is the only thing that kind of fucked with me, and the fact that they knew these people without ever having actually met them in person. They knew all this shit about them.
Yeah.
Which didn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
And of course the angel.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, dude manages to bone Chickie without dying, unlike every other dude. And, they go home, and it ends with him and the angel saying, we don't want to bring your wife into a shitty-looking place. Let's run ahead and abandon her on the road and get the house all nice and pretty before she shows up.
Well, okay. That's... in a way that, I don't know, it's kind of backhanded. You want to get it nice for her, but you abandon her ass on the road to do it. That seems a bit extreme to me.
Yeah.
Here's some money. Go to the bazaar and go shopping for a while. You could have done that. You didn't have to fucking go abandon her ass.
Well, or send one of your servants ahead and tell them, say, give this message to my folks that I'm bringing a wife home, so, tell Dad to get the dead body out of the attic.
Yeah. So how much have you gotten through so far as the books go? How many books are there that you're going through?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I think there's I don't know. Damn, dude.
I'm sorry, put you on the spot.
I've gone through 3 of them, so but I think there's a dozen or more. I just don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, there's at least a dozen.
Well, it's no biggie. I was just a general idea.
Yeah.
Because I'd actually heard about the Apocrypha because my grandfather was all into that. He studied biblical history and all this shit, and he knew all about it. He could read the Bible in the original, in Greek or whatever. Not Greek, not original, but. So I'd heard about all that shit before, and it interests me as much as nothing, which is to say, not at all, because I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd always kind of wondered what the deal was. I had heard of various, like the Gospel of Mary, was it Mary Magdalene or something like that?
Yeah, there's
something like that. I don't remember. There's a couple of them I had heard before, but the Maccabees I had heard of before. Why don't you also? You said you do that, and then you do every other episode. You do the news episode.
Yeah, stories that I've heard about in the news that I haven't that don't necessarily get a lot of coverage elsewhere. Some weeks I'll talk about stuff that's like, say, the space program or 3D printing. Other weeks it'll be, just religious and political stories or archaeological stories. Whatever happens to strike me as being interesting, or America. She picks some of the stories.
Yeah, America, she used to be on a podcast. I forgot the name of it.
Godless Drunkards. Or Godless Drinking Hour, something like that. I forget.
Godless Drinking Hour, that sounds right. And she's in Arizona, which is like the south of the Mississippi of the fucking, out west, far west or whatever. It's pretty racist out there. She's related some experiences she's had while she was living out there. I think she lives in, is it Tucson?
Yeah, she lives in Tucson.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. I've talked to her before. I'm trying to get on the show, but she's a busy lady, which is, all good. She's always into different stuff. So, I mean, it's good to keep busy, but.
Yeah, she's been really busy here of late. Of course, with the holidays coming up, everybody's busy.
Exactly. So, I don't blame her, but yeah. What are a couple of do you remember the couple of stories you've covered recently?
Well, to be honest, I tend to blot everything out after I'm done recording. Well, there was that one story about the one thing with the one guy. No. If I can find a really cool story on 3D printing, I love covering those just because of the potential. It's been a while since I've covered this story, but I just love hearing all these stories about them doing prosthetic limbs for people for nothing. I mean, it costs them like $10 to print the limb out, and somebody's got who didn't have a arm or whatever, now has one. And of course, the thing they're doing for kids, which when I read about this, it's like, okay, if I'm an adult and if I lost my hand, I would want this. They're doing like superhero characters, hands. So you can have a hand like Iron Man.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, or Captain America or Wolverine or whomever. And it's like, damn, if I had to have a prosthetic hand for some reason, that's what I'd want.
Fuck yeah. Shit. Yeah, those are good heartwarming stories. I think. We probably need to cover more of those. Kind of balance out the shittiness that's sure to come here soon or whatever.
Really? You think a guy who shares an awful lot of the same characteristics of Hitler is going to give us a shitty country?
It's like I said in the intro for this week that's coming up Monday. He nominates Jeff Sessions. Why can't I say that fucking name? Who was put up for nomination for a federal judgeship in the 80s and couldn't get confirmed because of his racist shit. And he puts him up for fucking AG. What the fuck? That's like putting up Bork for fucking the Supreme Court when Reagan did it or whatever. Except this is even fucking worse. I guess it's all relative. Bork was in the whole Watergate thing or whatever. But Jeff Sessions is just a...
Oh, well, Steve Bannon, whose pants literally caught on fire, is just as bad, if not worse.
He's a white supremacist.
Yeah.
And he's a chief strategist. So that's kind of fucking scary. What's his strategy going to be?
Kill minorities. To go all Godwin on everything, on his rise to power, Hitler was promising all these wonderful things for the German people, and telling the working class, we're going to do this for you, we're going to do that for you. And in private, he was meeting with the business leaders and telling them, no, I don't mean any of that. I'm just saying that to get votes. And then we have Trump, who says, oh, the jobs are going to come back under me, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts immediately hiring lobbyists white supremacists, bankers.
Yeah, but that's just, to me, the lobbyist thing is just fucking business as usual. Obama did the same.
Well, yeah,
thing.
yeah, I know, but
I know what you're saying. I mean, the white supremacist, all that shit. Yeah, that's fucking scary.
Yeah.
And he's talking about getting Rudy Giuliani and fucking Newt Gingrich. You fucking kidding me right now?
well, you know who he wanted to have to be the head of the Treasury, but who said, no, I don't think so. Jamie Dimon.
Why didn't that surprise me?
And it's like, wait. One of the guys responsible for the housing crisis is the guy you want to put in charge of the Treasury?
And he doesn't even give two shits. He thinks it's great.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, he got mad because, and they fall all over themselves kissing his ass in any of those committee meetings. Instead of the exceptions like Elizabeth Warren, he got his feelings all hurt because, she was being mean to him and shit. He's the CEO. Is it Stanley Morgan? What is it? He's the CEO of one of those huge ass. Why can't I think of it off the top of my head?
Yeah, it's like J.P. Morgan Chase.
Yeah, one of those huge ass banking houses or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's great. That's even worse. I mean, and again, Obama put in all those guys from the Wall Street in his administration. So,
Yeah.
But this is a little different to me. I mean,
Well,
I already knew that was going to happen anyway, because both parties are now fucking Wall Street, like to suck Wall Street's dick. Let's just be real about it.
Yeah. But Obama wasn't going after, the heads of the various banks. He was going after the lower level executives. Not that it's great, but it's still,
Yeah, I know.
It's still slightly better than handing it over to a guy who was basically the architect of the great financial collapse of 2008.
Yeah, I mean, and he's bringing in ideologues, really, and that's what scares me the most. It's one thing to bring in technocrats or whatever into your administration, but to bring in ideologues like Giuliani and Gingrich and all those fuckers, that scares the shit out of me. Because that means you're more about fucking putting through a certain ideology than you are and actually paying attention to anything like pesky facts or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and they're all going to be ass kissers of him. So they won't stand up to him and tell him, no, actually, Donald, nuking these guys is a bad idea.
Yeah, who the fuck knows? His Secretary of Defense is kind of, oh my God.
Because basically it's, if Trump wants to nuke somebody, he and one other top official have to agree to make the call. That's it. He doesn't have to call Congress and say, I'm going to do this and it's going to be huge. He just,
huge.
Yeah, just tells whomever, and he's, like the vice president or the secretary of defense, we're going to nuke him. And, since he's got sycophants, they're probably going to say, all right, boss, we'll nuke him.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's what, again, nobody knows. I think a lot of it is just people don't know what the fuck he's going to do because he's fucking so inconsistent on every fucking thing. He keeps changing his mind, so it's hard to tell on all that stuff.
Somebody pointed out today, I was listening to a podcast, they said, the irony is that after, today, all the countries that won World War II are led by extreme right-wingers. Because you've got Theresa May in the UK, you've got Trump here in the States, you've got Putin in Russia, and it's like the one country that's considered a liberal democracy out of the ones that fought the war is Germany.
Exactly.
It's just like we flipped.
Yeah, we didn't learn our own lessons, apparently.
No.
Before you started reading the Apocrypha, you were reading another book about, it was comparing different mythologies to the Bible or whatever. What was the name of that again?
Bible Myths and Their Parallels in Other Religions by T.W. Doane.
And that book was written
late 1800s.
You were reading that book for a good little while.
Almost 2 years to the day of when I started the podcast.
Yeah. So that was your original book that you started reading. Well, you were doing that and alternating between the news episodes at that too, weren't you?
Yeah.
What was that book? I mean, the title pretty much sounds like it says it all.
Yeah, well, it's basically a college course in a book form, because he went through and did this extensive comparison. Mainly, he focused on, Jesus, but he did hit the Old Testament stuff as well. But he would take, this particular story from Christianity or Judaism and then compare it to all these other stories in different religions from around the world, including ones which were in the Americas that predated contact with, Europe. So they had to have sprung up organically there, or at least had their roots in those myths before, in the earliest precursors to them, some like 20,000 years ago, because that's when they think people walked across the land bridge from Europe to the Americas.
It was extremely well researched. I mean, there was footnotes all over the motherfucking place.
Oh, dude, and I didn't even read half of them on the air. I just read only the ones that were that he actually made a comment. I didn't read the ones where it was just like, see, Bubble Snorts, page 53 or whatever, There were some weird titles and stuff like that, and some of them. Of course, you're dealing with the 19th century, so they had all kinds of crazy transliterations for non-English terms.
Yeah, and they loved verbosity back then, I will say that.
Yeah.
It seems like they loved to, I mean, I don't know, it kind of seemed like 20th century's done that less, but if you ever read books from like Charles Dickens, just for an example, was fucking wordy as shit. It's because they used to fucking pay by the word or whatever.
Well, yeah, and back then, people had more time to sit around and do nothing but read.
Well, yeah, there was nothing else to do, really.
Yeah, I mean,
didn't have TV or anything.
Yeah, well, and that's why they wore really elaborate clothing, because they, their day was not so rigidly structured. I mean, our days only really became rigidly structured after the introduction of the railroad, because they had to make sure that the trains ran at a set schedule so they didn't collide into one another.
It's still a good book. I mean, if you're into I've always found it fascinating, the myths and like you said, the parallels between the biblical stuff and other older religions or whatever, or faith traditions or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't suspect unless you read that book, like Little Red Riding Hood is a sun myth.
Yeah, that's out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, but when you read his explanation of it, it's like, well, fuck yeah, that makes perfect sense. Why the hell didn't anybody say this before? And why don't people say it now?
Well, it's because nobody's paying attention, I guess.
But, the whole thing about the Red Riding Hood, the red is the rising sun. She's a young girl going to visit her grandma, which, of course, is where the sun sets in the west, and she's eaten by the wolf, who, that's the darkness of winter swallowing the sun, and then the hunter comes in and chops open the wolf and liberates both Red Riding Hood and grandmother. And
well, isn't that one of the Grimm's fairy tales?
Yeah.
They must have gotten it from an older source themselves.
Yeah, well, that's what the Brothers Grimm did. They went around Germany collecting all the old folk tales because they were worried about them dying out. And then years later, they were all sanitized and cleaned up for little kids.
Well, that's no goddamn fun.
Well, dude, I gave it to an ex of mine when we were dating, my mother's copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales. And those were sanitized somewhat, and they were still pretty brutal. There was like one I can remember where a king, to punish an evil witch or something like that, he made her dance in metal shoes on a hot stove until she died.
That is gruesome as fuck.
Another one, a king had a witch or some evil old woman put in a barrel filled with broken glass, sealed up, and thrown into the river.
What in the literal fuck, man? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Who the fuck comes up with that kind of shit?
Yeah. Somebody in one of the Facebook groups I'm in, not too long ago was complaining about like Mother Goose or something. There was some, some rhyme that they didn't like. And it was like, okay, just go ahead and stay away from the Grimm's fairy tales. You're not going to like them if this is upsetting to you. And if you find the originals, they're even worse than the modern ones, which are slightly cleaned up.
Yeah, that's fucking disturbing. I mean, but I guess, back in the day, it was a rough life, You could die at like 30 or some shit. I mean, life expectancy wasn't too long. It's brutal. There was no fucking real medical. It was all fucking magic and, bullshit like that. There wasn't actually any. Hell, they thought there was 4 humors or whatever the fuck it is in your body.
Yeah.
Shit like that. I mean, so you can imagine that the fairy tales are going to be a little more rough, a little more sadistic, I guess you could say.
Yeah, sort of like the parts of the Bible nobody wants to talk about.
I like that book, the illustrated. Well, I forgot what it's called.
The awkward Moments Children's Bible.
Yeah, that's fucking funny when they illustrate the fucking shit, and they get mad. What are you getting mad about? It's literal.
It's what it says, man.
Yeah, it literally says that. So why are you just? It's just people don't, they don't think about it until they see it drawn out in front of them. They're like, oh, wait a minute, that's really fucked up, and it disturbs the shit out of them, really,
Well, I can remember being a little kid, and me and my mother were watching. This was back before cable and back before VCRs, et cetera, et cetera. They had they were showing the Bible on TV, the John Huston version, right? Or maybe it's Cecil B. DeMille's. I don't remember who did it, but I know John Huston was in it because he played Noah. And they had the whole thing with Abraham taking Isaac up to the hill to sacrificing. And I'm just watching that, and I'm like 4 or some shit. I'm like, this is fucking horrifying. And and I'm asking my mom, I'm like, why is he doing this? And she says, well, God is doing it to test him. And I'm like, okay, so what if God told you to do that to me? And she's like, well, I wouldn't do it.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, but I mean, why would you? Why would you do this?
People don't think about it. It's just one of those things where it's just so ingrained in our culture that we just don't even fucking think about it.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. People need to fucking really pay attention to what the fuck they're teaching their kids or what they're reading or whatever.
Yeah.
But nobody does that because they're afraid to go outside of their box, and try to confront. I mean, it's painful. It can be painful to kind of realize that everything you've been brought up to believe is all bullshit, So, I mean, I can understand that. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, when I gained my reason, as it were, it was a relief because I was sitting there in church, going, oh, man, does anybody actually believe this? And they just happened to read from the Sermon on the Mount that Sunday, and Christ condemns divorce. And I'm like, my parents got divorced. My girlfriend's parents are getting a divorce. And in both cases, they're going to be better off. My mother and my girlfriend's mother will both be better off being divorced. So how can you actually condemn divorce? And then, Christ says, if you look at a woman with lustful thoughts, that's that's the same as actually sleeping with her. And I'm like, well, whoever the fuck wrote that doesn't understand anything about human biology, because we are programmed to have such thoughts by biology, so we will reproduce. I mean, our goal is to find the best mate possible, and that will change over time, but the programming is hardwired into us, so we're always going to find somebody else attractive. We're programmed to find them attractive. So I was like, it's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you just want some people it's gradual, some people it's a ha-ha moment. I think most people it's gradual, but
yeah.
Unless it's somebody who's always raised on reason and really never had that religious background, and they encounter religion later on, and they're like, what the fuck? No, this is obvious bullshit. The only reason people, I think, believe it's because it's told to them when they're kids, and, you're very impressionable as a child. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were told this when you were already grown, you're like, no, that's fucking, what the fuck are you even talking about? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever fucking heard. So Tucker, on a fairly recent episode, I forgot the name of it. It was a pretty short one, but you kind of gave what I thought was kind of a heartfelt explanation of, I guess you could say, your poverty, or your, I don't know what you would call it.
Poverty. That's what you call it, man. I mean,
and I gotta tell you, it really kind of, because I don't think I'd ever heard you. You're a pretty laid back guy, and you keep things close to the vest or whatever. But you really kind of laid it all out there, and I think it kind of moved me, to be honest with you, a little emotional, because I know there are a lot of people out there, and you kind of spoke to that. There are a lot of people out there who are barely making it paycheck to paycheck or whatever through no fault of their own. Most of the people are, despite what Republicans might want to tell you, they're all lazy and don't want to do nothing. And they're working their ass off, but they just can't seem to get ahead or whatever.
My income has effectively been flat for the past 20 years.
Yeah, was there a lot of people start out, they're like, okay, or whatever, they're doing what they need to do, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a situation they never thought they would find themselves in. It's not something that's just like all of a sudden. It's just like, it seems like to me, it's just basically a bunch of bad shit happens to you, consecutively or whatever over a course of years, and you just keep getting further and further into the hole or whatever.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that. I mean, in 96, I was working for Borders in their distribution center, and I was making about what I make now without adjusting for inflation. Okay? Without adjusting for inflation. And they, they started having real financial troubles. They'd been having them kind of for a while, but, we were going in and being lucky to get, 40 hours worth of work during what was supposed to be our busy season. And when I had started there in 90, it was the busy season, when like September rolled around, overtime started happening more and more frequently. And then from like October until the end of the year, or just after the first of the year, it was nothing but balls to the wall overtime. And then gradually it kept dropping off. And I had picked up a second job in 96, and I was working 40 hours a week at a gas station, making half the money on the hour that I was making at the Borders warehouse. But because I was getting more hours in, I was taking home more money. And, Borders had started this unofficial policy, of course. They were going after anybody who was a senior employee who'd been there more than a few years and was at the top out rate, trying to flush them out of the company so they didn't have to pay so much money. And I just said, fuck it, and quit. So I did the stop and rob job for a year, and then I got a job at the Gap warehouse here in town. I was making more there than I was at the stop and rob, but I wasn't making nearly what I was at Borders. Gradually, it began to improve for a variety of reasons. And then we started, Gap started having problems as well. They had, they were getting in weird clothing lines. It was like, nobody will wear this. Nobody. I mean, they were like these weird colored striped pants for men, not for women, that were made out of, like what you it reminded me of a shower curtain, the material. And I'm like, nobody wants this. Nobody. And, so I had the opportunity there to walk into a job paying exactly what I was making. So that's what I did. That didn't work out so well, that job. And then it was just, a series of temp jobs that paid varying levels. And I made actually pretty decent money for a while at a few of the jobs, but, for one reason or another, they didn't last. Or I, got tired of dealing with them, and I moved on to something else that I thought was better and didn't necessarily turn out to be better. And then the economy collapsed in 2008, and fuck, I was happy with a job at Wally World making just above minimum wage because it paid more than unemployment did. and, slowly trying to crawl my way out of it. But I had my car die on me, and that's it. I couldn't replace it, and I can't find anything that pays significant amounts of money. Well, there's Beretta, but I really don't want to work for them.
The gun manufacturer?
Yeah, because apparently what they do is they have, like the easiest way to get hired on is you have to work these oddball shifts. And I don't mean it's like a late night shift or something like that. It's, you work so many days on first shift, and then so many days on second shift, and then so many days on third shift, and then you're back on first, and so on, which is fucking crazy. And I mean, apparently they do have some shifts that are normal scheduled. You're hired on and you do this, and you're hired on or first or second or third, and that's where you stay. But those jobs are apparently few in number, and also apparently if you're hired on, they give you a signing bonus, but if you don't last 2 years, then you have to repay that signing bonus.
Oh, fuck you.
It's like a $7,000 signing bonus.
Well, fuck, that's
nice money, but if you can't make it 2 years there, you've got to come up with $7,000, and it's not prorated, so it's not like, oh, well, you've been here, a year and a half, so you don't have to pay back the full $7,000. You got to pay back that $7,000. What are most people going to do if somebody hands them $7,000?
Spend it right away.
Right.
It's not like you really have a choice.
Yeah, because most people don't have more than $400 in savings, if that.
I didn't even know there was a Beretta factory here.
Yeah, no, they just built it in Gallatin it just opened this year.
Okay, I didn't know that. And it's in Gallatin, okay.
Yeah. It's apparently not too far from where I'm working now, because I see people with Beretta stickers on their cars going by. But like I said, it's not, I don't like the idea of having to, not knowing, not having a set schedule like that. And, fuck, man, I don't want to work for a company that, makes their living off of selling, or funding the NRA and selling, large amounts of weapons to people, regardless of whether or not they actually should be having firearms.
Yeah, that bothers me. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So what are, some of the things that go along with some of the practical things, like, for example, you have to basically either take the bus, which everybody knows mass transit in this city is shitty, or you have to walk.
Yeah, pretty much. There's there's two cab companies in town. They're owned by, I can't remember if the guys that own them are brothers or cousins, but they're both white supremacists, so I'm not going to use them.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's Uber and Lyft are here, but they don't like my my prepaid card for some reason, and because I don't have one of the two, I don't have Sprint, or I don't have AT&T or Verizon, I don't have great signal in town. So if I try to launch the app, because Uber will take PayPal, even though they won't take my bank card. Where does PayPal get its my money from? My bank account. But anyway, but it takes the app 10 minutes to try and find a signal, if that, for some odd reason. I can use a navigation app in town just fine with no problems. But Uber's app just went, So, fuck them.
So basically it's a pain in the ass for you to...
Yeah, and there's hardly any sidewalks, so that,
And like I said, mass transit's not great. So if you want to go to, you basically have to get up but early to fucking walk. I'm assuming you have to, is there a bus stop right there? Do you have to walk? That place you work now, though, is closer, isn't it?
Well, sort of. Because when I was taking the bus to Nashville, I was spending 4 hours a day getting to and from that job. Because the bus stop is 2.5 miles away from the house, because they moved it from where it was half a mile. Be more convenient for people. They put it in the Walmart parking lot rather than just off the square. So I have to walk, I would have to walk. That would take about 40 minutes to get to the to Wally World to catch the bus. And then, it'd take however long from there to get to work, which was usually I'd leave the house at 5 a.m. and get to work just before or just after 7, unless, there was a train or bad traffic or whatever. And to get to this job, I can leave the house a little after 5. And walking, I can get there at 7. It's actually, it's about, I save a half an hour at a time by walking, but there's a gal I work with who lives literally 1 block over from me and who's been nice enough to give me rides to and from work most of the time that I've been there. So I save a huge amount of time that way, but it's less than ideal because, like, if I need something for the house, like, say, lumber, I have to find a friend with a truck. Or, if I need to get something that's kind of big and heavy, I have to find somebody with a car. I can't just walk to the store, even if the store is close, because there's no way I can carry, 3 bags of cement 10 miles home.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. It's hard to get, it's one of those things where people who have cars don't understand basically what the fuck it's like to not have one, and to the kind of the logistical problems, the shit they take for granted, they don't really realize.
Like before I leave, I have to pull out my phone and check the weather app just to see if it's going to rain, because I have to care about that.
And yeah, because you have to walk in this shit.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not the only. Of course, getting to and fro is not the only thing. Of course, then you just have you were in a financial crunch before you got this new. Of course, I'm assuming you still do, but not as bad.
Yeah.
And you had to ask for people. I don't think anybody likes to do that, but sometimes you just get in a situation where you have no other choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I did. And I really hated having to beg for money on the internet, but that was apparently, that was the only way I was going to be able to solve anything, because, my mother had just gotten out of the hospital from having a life-threatening infection. She spent like a week in the ICU. Both my brothers had gone up and visited her. One of my brothers paid for an in-home healthcare nurse while she was, when she was first released. So, she was it was definitely a bad situation all the way around, and it was not, and there was nothing else I could do if I wanted to keep the place. I just had to go on the internet and beg for money, because fuck, I was going to lose everything.
Yeah, I had thought you had actually bought it or something, but you just rented.
No, well, I own the trailer. I just rent the lot.
That's right. You rent the lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's kind of, it's not like you can pick up the trailer and take it somewhere else or something.
No.
You're kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
And so, of course, there's just the general thing of just not having any extra money to do any fucking thing. You have to, basically, if you want to even, I don't know, have a fucking extra beer or something, you basically just have to plan it out. Or see, kind of well, can I afford to, go out and eat or something, or just simple shit like that.
Yeah, no, the brain has a finite amount of processing power, and poor people, they found, spend a significant portion of their brain's processing power doing nothing but worrying about their finances, and it makes it more likely that they'll make bad decisions because they're having to worry about their immediate survival needs, and they can't think of anything, past a certain point, just because they're so occupied with dealing with stuff in the now. I don't have a retirement plan. Well, I do. It's called work until you die.
And that's most people, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but I don't have 401. I don't have a 401k. I've never been able to afford to have the money taken out of my check.
Exactly. So yeah, you're basically stuck where you are, and you have limited choice as far as a job, limited choices to where you can actually go unless you ask other people to help you out or whatever to go places.
Right.
But you're not, like I said, this stereotype of you're just fucking, you're lazy and you don't want to, try any harder or whatever. I mean, you've worked, I'm assuming you haven't had any significant unemployment that you could control, I wouldn't think.
I mean, the only time I was unemployed for a significant period was after the economy crashed in '08. And, I was going nuts, and every day I was sending out resumes. And, that entire time I only had 4 interviews.
Yeah, the financial collapse, I think, fucked a lot of people.
Yeah, well, parts of Tennessee had like a 50% unemployment rate. So, yeah.
I mean, it was already getting worse anyway.
Yeah.
I think that just pretty much, I mean, it bottomed out, and you can thank Clinton, I think, for a lot of that. For kind of signing the death warrant by repealing what was left of Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
And shit like that, and basically letting the big banks know, hey, we can pretty much do whatever the fuck we want, because we don't have any regulations anymore on what we do. That's just it just seems like it's been a steady downward spiral for the middle class since basically Reagan.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, stagflation started with under Carter, which it really wasn't. That wasn't his fault. I think it was just a perfect storm of shit going on or whatever. And then ever since then, they've used that, corporations and banks have used that as an excuse to basically fuck the middle class out of shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's been a downward spiral since then, and it's not. And of course, we've elected Trump. I mean, the news keeps just getting better. I mean, let me tell you. I mean, neoliberalism, which was represented under Clinton, old and new, has been that way. I mean, Obama was that way too. It's pretty much fucked us to the point where now we're stuck with a fucking populist crazy person because people think he's going to do something different. No, he's going to do the same fucking shit Republicans have been doing since Reagan, fucking trickle down bullshit. Well, it's going to trickle down like piss on you. It basically is what's going to happen, and that's what I'm scared of. I mean, what can be done? I mean, in practical, what are some things that you think would just help people? I think me personally, I think mass transit more everywhere, like in Europe, that it's fucking everywhere or whatever. I think that would go a long way to helping people out if affordable mass transit was available in the Middle Tennessee area.
Yeah, well, there's that. There's an actual jobs program, where they tried to create, jobs for people because nobody wants to work at fucking McDonald's. Nobody.
No, and Germany does that. Germany actually has if you've ever paid attention to them, they have like a trade program where if you don't go to college, then there's another track you can go down for trades or whatever, and that you can actually apprentice with a company or whatever. Yeah. And you can get a job through them, but there's no jobs program or anything. There's no kind of effort to try to get people, whatever happened to vocational education and shit. Yeah. I mean, of course, they say robots are replacing a lot of those jobs, but there's still a lot of shit that people are going to be needed for, and it's just like they don't care to me. I mean, they need more, I don't know. They're trying to get everybody to go back to school. Go back to school for what? Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever you learn in school now is going to be obsolete by the time you graduate, no matter what field you're in. So they need to teach, critical thinking skills, but, that's not a good idea because, they'll stop voting for the crazies. So that's out. And, we've got people who are burned with student debt. And I mean, I have some, but mine is not nearly as bad as some people I know who are younger than me. And, it's like where I went to trade school. When I started there in 2000, a semester going 4 nights a week was $150. When I left, going 1 night a week
was $150. And that was 4 years later, and it was like, this is. There were times when I had trouble making the tuition there. So,
do you have a degree?
I have a machinist certification. I don't have, they don't issue a degree per se there, but I do have a machining certification. I've been to college, but I never managed to hang on long enough to be able to graduate for various reasons.
Well, I don't think it's necessary to have a degree necessarily anymore.
What got me was when the economy had collapsed, I was applying at some place and they had a job. It's $12 an hour what it paid, but they wouldn't hire you unless you had a 4-year degree. And I'm like, nobody with a 4-year degree is going to stick around a job paying $12 an hour. They can't afford that.
Well, a lot of people are, where I work's doing that now. They're making it where you have to have a 4-year degree.
Yeah, but do they pay more than $12 an hour?
Not all of them. Some positions do, some don't. It's just ridiculous. You're making it harder for regular people to get jobs. And that's another thing. These fucking wages are just, they've stagnated.
Yeah.
Minimum wage is ridiculous. Nobody can fucking live on that shit.
No.
And you need, we need a living wage or something. Even if it's not better wages, we need better transportation. Healthcare, don't get me started on that fucking shit. I'm having a hard time being positive right now, considering what the fuck's going on right now in this country.
You and me both, so.
I'm trying to find a silver lining. Well, we need better. I will say that Nashville, the Nashville area, Nashville, of course, itself, but of course it affects the outlying areas to a degree, is more liberal than the rest of the state by a good stretch. However, it's this old neoliberal kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
The mayor is trying to make affordable housing more common in the core area, but I don't think it's a voluntary thing for when they build shit. That's not enough. She put out a good mass transit plan. Whether that gets implemented, I don't know.
Actually, it probably won't, because the Koch brothers have gotten a law passed that says the state is in charge of all mass transit.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, the Koch brothers have gotten a law passed which says that the state is in charge of all mass transit and that the cities are limited as to what they can do.
Are you talking about through ALEC? Is that how they got it passed or whatever?
I don't remember the details. The Nashville scene had the story a couple of years ago. But yeah, no, they the city Nashville had some plans, and the state, said, nope, you can't do them because now we're in charge of all the mass transit. Never mind that they're like in Europe, right when the internet was starting to hit, okay, you could on your cell phone find out exactly where your fucking bus was. You still can't do that in Nashville. The bus, they have an app, but the app won't tell, it'll tell you, oh, well, the bus is running, this is the times they run and this is where they stop. But you can't hit on the app and find out, well, this bus is exactly here at this time.
Well, because they don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
If it doesn't help out fucking, hipsters or rich people, they don't give a shit. Fuck.
Yeah.
And that's just the same thing that they did when we Nashville implemented non-discrimination law or whatever. The state overrode that. They passed a law to override it, saying that municipalities couldn't have their own fucking anti-discrimination laws and try to say it was because, well, we want everybody to be uniform. Motherfucker, please. You only did that because you didn't want those gay people to have rights,
Yeah. Well, that Nashville and one other big city has decriminalized marijuana, and the state says, oh, you can't do that. That law is not valid. It is state law supersedes your laws about decriminalization.
Yeah, so I have a feeling we're going to have it's going to come down to some of these cities are going to try to fucking break away. It's going to be like city states or some shit. Especially these in red states, these blue cities in red states.
Well, what I'll be interested in is, Sessions has said that marijuana is evil and needs to be stopped. Well, the Obama administration has, just been hands off largely. The states that have legalized marijuana either for medical or recreational use, and Colorado's made tons of money off of legal weed. What's going to happen if Sessions decides to start prosecuting, pot dispensaries and pot stores in places like Colorado and the other states? I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry, legal, and he starts going after that. That's going to really piss people off.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. We're fucked in so many ways.
Yeah.
Well, on that positive note, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. Tucker, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your awesome podcast?
It is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and anywhere else that finer podcasts are available.
That's one. I like that. Finer podcasts are available. You are on Twitter, aren't you? TP Atheist, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it. You can find me on Facebook, just search for the Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast, and it's probably me that you're going to find.
Yeah, there's only one. Don't confuse him with Deborah's fucking shit, because somebody did that before. Beyond the Trailer Park, that's her thing. And of course, you have a Blogspot page you put all your show notes on and shit.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'll put all that shit up on the show notes or whatever. Yeah, so go, and don't you have a Patreon now?
Yep. Patreon.com/ it's TN Tucker. That's what it is. I couldn't remember which was first, me or the state.
Okay. Yeah, so go check him out in all those fine places. Go support him if you can. He is on don't you shows come out about every Sunday, or is it Monday?
I usually try to have them posted by about 10 o'clock Sunday nights.
Okay, yeah. So go check out his show on Sunday nights. And the Apocrypha, I've been on there a couple of times. I'll probably be on there again reading from that lovely set of books. And listening to news episodes, and the lovely and beautiful America Darling Curl shows up on occasion. So that's well worth a listen for that. All right, Tucker. Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And hopefully I'll be on your show again. Let me say that 100 more times to read from the Apocrypha.
Yep.
And you said you finished Tobin, so I guess I don't know whatever the book is now.
The next one is Judith.
Well, that sounds like a normal name. Okay.
Yeah.
Judith. Okay.
I think that's the one where she seduces some guy and then stabs him with a tent stake.
Okay, well, that sounds awesome, actually. I might want to get in on that action, so... Yeah, you might hear me. I want to hear about the tent stake. All right, man, we'll take it easy, okay?
All right, you too.
That'll do it for the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Tucker Drake for coming on and talking to me. It was great fun. If you want to find the podcast, of course, you can come to the podunkpolymath.com. That is the home page. And the music is by cdbaby.com/cd/. So check them out. You can also hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google Plus at the Podunk Polymath. My email is podunk.polymath@gmail.com. Of course, you can become part of the posse over at patreon.com/thepodunk-polymath. And, of course, there's a call-in number, which I'm still waiting for somebody to call, 615-378-7676, which spells Popo. And, of course, the 7676 means you're calling for freedom, baby. Also, of course, on the page, you can follow me on WordPress. You can see my latest tweets. You can donate to PayPal if you would like. Subscribe on RSS, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Various buttons there on the side of the page. Of course, the Patreon button's also there. You can see the recent posts and recent comments. So, thanks again for joining me for another fun-filled and awesome episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you had fun with me as usual. And until next time, y'all take it easy, okay?